Hi, I'm Dr. Caroline Leaf and welcome to my podcast, Cleaning Up the Mental Mess. In today's podcast, I interview Dr. Sherry Ross, who is an award-winning OB-GYN and women's health expert and is the host of Lady Parts on Ellen Tube. We discuss the relationship between women's sexual health and mental health, as well as the benefits and importance of a healthy attitude to sex and how this is good for your brain. But before we begin, I just want to remind you that it's my annual mental health retreat in December, Dallas, Texas, 2nd to the 4th of December, and it's live, not virtual, and I am really going to get into topics on how to help you manage the trauma and the anxiety that going through something like a global pandemic has brought to us. It's a practical, hands-on mental health retreat, and we are offering CMEs and CEUs for those of you that need them. I'm going to be walking you special workshops on how to use the neurocycle to manage anxiety, to manage dealing with trauma, to help your kids. I'm going to be doing amazing workshop panels as well with people like Michelle Williams, who's one of my speakers from Destiny's Child. We're going to be talking about depression and how to manage depression using the neurocycle. I'm going to be doing special meet and greets in person. I can't wait to see you there. It is going to be so much fun. The link and details for the conference will be in the show notes. And just before we begin, this podcast is for educational purposes only. It's not medical advice. If you need medical advice, please contact the appropriate medical professional. And now, on to today's podcast. Dr. Sherry, it's so lovely to talk to you again. We had an amazing live about a couple of months ago, and I've been looking forward to talking to you again. So welcome to my podcast. And we really need to clean up our mental mess when it comes to sexual health and all the fallacies around it and all the misconceptions and the importance for mental health. So I couldn't think of a better person to discuss this than you. So welcome in.
Oh, I had such a great time with you. I'm so excited to talk about this great topic. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it is a great topic. So if you don't mind, just start off by telling the listeners and viewers who you are. If not everyone knows who you are, some do. What you do and why you do what you do.
So my name's Dr. Sherry Ross, also known as Dr. Sherry. I'm in private practice in Santa Monica. Been there for almost 30 years. Love educating women. Love talking about things that nobody else but Dr. Leaf and I like to talk about. I co-host a show with Sarah Hyland called Lady Parts on Ellen Tube. Again, just everybody wants to hear this information, as you know. Written 2 books, Sheology and the Sequel, because we have so much to talk about.
We do. Okay. Well, Sherry, Dr. Sherry, this is your field of expertise and you have such an incredible approach and you're so direct and honest. I love your Instagram page. I mean, you just call it what it is and it's great. And it's such a, you said this before, people don't talk enough about sexual health and it needs to be spoken about. It's not something that we should be hiding. It's something that we should be absolutely open and honest about. So what's the easiest way to help people understand sexual health, mental health, and being a woman and enjoying your sexuality?
Yeah, well, and this is so important. I mean, here's the problem is that our sexual health is kind of a barometer for our mental health. You know,
I love that.
You know, if you think about it, it's so true because we're just not talking about the subject enough, and because mental health affects so many women, depression, anxiety. And when you think about the stages of our sexual response, right, desire is the most important thing, right? If you don't have desire, right, that's the starting line. And of course, if you have anti-depression or anxiety, the desire is just not there. Like that's the last thing you're thinking about, right?
Absolutely. Well, your mind is going to change your brain. And if your mind is worrying about stuff, your brain is just going to go hand in hand with whatever your mind is doing. And then your body just like listens to the brain. So everything kind of shuts down. So yeah, that is so important.
And, you know, and it's so interesting because men and women, I mean, we are so night and day in every way, but especially when it comes to our you know, what really turns us on, what organ needs to be stimulated the most, right, is our brain. It's above the shoulders. And so this is where men and women really differ and why, if anyone that has any mental issues as it relates to depression or anxiety, you know, they're not interested. There's no desire. So my approach is always, let's talk about it. Let's ask. You know, I always ask my patients, right? The legs go up in stirrups. And I want to know, how is sex? Are you having orgasms by yourself, with your partner? Are you enjoying them? Are you having any issues you want to talk about or share? Because it's a very awkward conversation even for doctors.
I'm just listening to this and thinking you've got them up in the stirrups and you're asking those questions. I have had 4 babies and I have been in the stirrups multiple times, being 50s, 57. And no OB-GYN has ever asked me about my sex life, has ever asked me those questions. And yet it should be, you are asking every single patient because it's part of our functioning. And if you look at the actual research, and you can please correct me if I'm wrong, but we are thinking about sex a large majority of the day. It's not just men. It's not just that we are weird in our brain. It's that we are, it's a connection point. It's a beautiful thing. And yet we don't talk about something that we think about so much. And when it's distorted, it becomes a huge problem, as you already said. So that's really interesting that you are asking those questions when you've got someone in the stirrups in front of you. What is the response and what do you do? What is that? Are people opening up to you? What's happening?
Yeah, well, more and more, I think the conversation, the vagina is in right now. I'm sure you can tell.
Oh, I see that.
We're not just talking about it, but how do we care for it? We're talking about the clitoris. And, it's so interesting too, because I often will pull out the mirror and I'm like, let's look around. What's happening? Like to the younger gals, especially, because they have to know they have to know the roadmap. They have to know where the holy grail is. They have to know where their clitoris is, right? They have to know. And so, in the conversation, depending what age they are, I'll ask these kind of questions, especially as we're talking about birth control. And I'll start talking, have you had an orgasm? Don't wait for your partner to show you. You need to show yourself. And they're often quiet because I think they're excited that someone's going to actually do something that maybe they've only thought of doing or nervous to do. And so I find that the doctor can really lead the conversation. And unfortunately, like in your case, if they're not leading the conversation, sometimes you have to sort of mention it. Like, I'm having a little trouble getting in the mood, or I can't get over the edge, and I get excited, but I can't get it over to have an orgasm. And there's so many, problems along the way, right? So I see it a lot as it relates to hormonal changes that all of us go through. You had 4 pregnancies. Did you ever notice any low libido during pregnancy?
I didn't. I actually found it was the same and sometimes increased with the hormones. So that was quite something. And yeah, I've been very fortunate in that area, I think. But I have so many friends and so many people in the position that I am. I go to so many different places, and I very often get cornered by women who will say to me they've never had an orgasm and they're in their 40s. Or 50s even, and that they've never enjoyed sex, and that pregnancy was like a terrible time. And I was thinking, that's so sad, because it's such a massive part of being a woman and in a relationship.
Yeah, it is really sad. I mean, when you think about up to 20% of women have never had an orgasm. And
20%.
Up to
wow.
20. I mean, and we can really, that's a whole nother podcast. I'd love to talk about it, but that's why the new teen or early, someone that's in their early 20s, I really like to drive the point home. Do you know where the clitoris is? Do you know what it does? Like, its only function is for pleasure. And I think they appreciate it. But, listen, pregnancy, postpartum, perimenopause, menopause, these are real hormonal times that women their desire, their hormonal effects really affect their really desire to have sex in a lot of ways, whether they like it or not.
This episode is brought to you by Bitty Baby from American Girl. Every child loves to play pretend, and parents know the stories children act out to help shape the person they grow to be, mentally and physically. This is why it's so important to provide your little ones with toys that foster nurturing traits of love, kindness, and care, which is exactly what Bitty Baby by American Girl is designed to do. Bitty Baby's perfect huggability provides young children a fun way to learn by enacting moments of nurture through play and imagination, and is a great way to encourage moments of kindness, compassion, and love with your child. And this year, Bitty Baby is getting a whole new look with new designs and colors, plus matching clothes for girls, so she can coordinate her look. From the adorable happy birthday outfit to the Blue Bear overall set, there are so many accessories to choose from to make your child's playtime extra special. Indeed, Bitty Baby offers an array of playtime combinations that offer unique nurturing and grows imaginations. From daily activities to special holiday celebrations, Bitty Baby gives her so many moments to enjoy that will inspire kindness for a lifetime. Teach her that kindness is the ultimate gift with Bitty Baby. You can get an exclusive one-time offer of 15% off your order of Bitty Baby products with a promo code DRLEAF at AmericanGirl.com. That's AmericanGirl.com, promo code DRLEAF. Exclusions include 18-inch dolls, Courtney Arcade, and Bitty Baby furniture. See AmericanGirl.com/BB podcast for details. The link and details will be in the show notes. Well, how do you advise and help someone who, let's say that someone does come to you, you said, you mentioned about orgasm and sexual desire. Why don't we maybe tackle that right now? If someone's in the chair and they're talking to you, they say they've never had an orgasm and their sexual desire is low, but they love their partner. What do you say? How are you helping them? What are you doing? How do you help someone like that?
Well, the first part of your question, I think, is really the most important as it relates to, are you having an orgasm? Do you know what it feels like? Because an orgasm, it takes a little bit of trial and error. I mean, I remember my first one I'll never forget it. I was at my girlfriend's house playing, in her older sister's room. We open a drawer, out pops a vibrator. I didn't even know what it was. I thought it was just a muscle massager. And, my friend who, really thought she had a one-up on me was like, you just kind of put it around this area, your vagina. I think she didn't use that word. She might have said your cooch. And she didn't even mention clitoris because I didn't learn that until later in life. But I just remember, she putting it on over my pants, and I remember feeling something, and away you go. But it does take a little bit of exploration and also knowing that it doesn't just happen very quickly. If the average orgasm, and that's with stimulation, I mean, you have to be in the right mood. You have to be in the right mental place, going back to that mental sort of kinship with your body, right? Your mind, body.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's psychoneurobiology. It's like so real.
Yeah. I mean, this is like your sweet spot. And it's so true. To get to your other sweet spot, you really have to have it working together. The average time is 13 to 20 minutes for a woman to have an orgasm. I always tell my younger patients, you have to know it yourself first. Masturbation is there should be no shame. No shame about it.
And there's so shame around. There's so much shame. There's so much religious shame and cultural shame around that. Sorry, I didn't interrupt you.
Yeah. No, but it's
talk to us about
true.
That.
It's just, we're all a byproduct of our mother, our grandmother, our neighbor, our favorite aunt, our every Sunday, religious ritual. And women, we're kind of taught sex is really for the man. I mean, I do see the paradigm, shifting, of course.
Shifting now, yeah.
Because of people like us talking about it.
Talking about it.
And keep talking about it because it's just so important that we too deserve it. So I think it's the conversation of, are you having one? You have to rely on yourself. Let's talk about masturbation. It's so important. If you don't know your roadmap, how are you going to share it with your partner? You can never, expect your partner to be the one to give it to you first. And I think another interesting statistic is that 25% of women only have an orgasm with penetration. So if you're having penetration with a male partner, only 25%. So,
wow, that's low.
That's low, unless you're touching yourself or your partner's touching you or you're bringing something in so it's about the education piece first.
Because that would I'm listening to that so carefully, the education piece, because if you don't know that and no one's told you that and you've grown up in an environment where it's kind of a taboo subject and where masturbation and those things have been seen as evil or bad or whatever, and you're now in a situation where you can't orgasm and you're newly married or something like that, that's going to mess with your mental health. Like immediately, what's wrong with me?
Exactly.
And as soon as you start feeling like that, that's going to impact that relationship, and it's a new relationship, and and it's whatever level of the relationship that it's in, that you're in intimacy, it's that your mental health is affected. As soon as what's wrong with me, your identity is affected. When your identity is affected, everything that needs to go into the sexual acts and enjoyment becomes affected. So this education piece is massive. It's massive, isn't it?
It really is. And I mean, I think this is how women just start being in touch with all aspects of our wellness, but sexual wellness and our health and mental state, they just go hand in hand. And if you think about it, up to 50% of women fake orgasms all the time.
Wow. 50% fake, 25% don't have them, and 20% have never had an orgasm. I mean, those are awful statistics.
They really are. So I think it's the important part of this is, you and I, two people from different sort of schools of health for women, but how they overlap, how we all have to work together to really help women understand their bodies, enjoy their sexuality, enjoy orgasm. And it takes these kind of conversations.
It does. It takes the conversations to open the door and help people feel more free. So, you know what I'd love to do, Sherry, is I'd love to take us through the stages. So we've spoken about the need for conversation. So and I know you can't teach everything now, and there needs to be multiple conversations about this. So whatever we don't cover today, we also have a live coming up and people can go and see that. And so we've got the previous live, so people can go and find out more, and they can go to your website because you teach so much on your Instagram page. You teach so much all the time on there. So what is the best way to start giving us a sort of mini overview education about being a woman's sexual health and mental health? Yeah,
well, so, if you just, like to your point, you have to understand how it all works. There's no magic button, you need desire. And I think, take you through the steps is also understanding your sexual response cycle, right? Because first it's desire.
That's
right?
Very good. Yeah.
I mean, without getting too medical here, but, desire is the thought, is increasing blood flow to the vulva, where all the erectile tissue is around the clitoris. So, that's when the vagina gets, lubricated, the nipples become erect. So that you have to be in touch with. So that's where you have to be in a peaceful setting and maybe listening to your, favorite playlist so that you get a little excited about it and block out mentally. You got to just be focused on your body, on your breathing, right? Because then that leads to arousal and all the good things that are happening physically. You start to breathe a little faster because maybe you have a good, good extra virgin coconut oil lube and you're massaging the clitoris. You're going with different pressures and different speeds, and you're learning what you like and what you don't like. And the clitoris, it has 8,000 nerve fibers, right? Almost double what men have. So you have to be patient with our girl. You got to be patient and you got to treat her very gently. And it may take up to, 13 to 20 minutes on average for this to happen. And then finally, when you can really feel it and you start to really, you start to lose control of your muscles, and it's a good thing. That's when you got to keep doing it at that pressure, at that speed, and then the orgasm happens, right? That's the climax of all this great blood flow and all this great energy that's going into this area. So it's learning these stages, understanding your body. You cannot be multitasking. You cannot be thinking about, doing your laundry or doing your market list and you can't
all
really,
those problems at work or problems with the kids. You got to put all that away.
It's exactly right. And so it's all part of that. So it's learning and understanding and educating, and go to the right websites. Don't look at porn. I mean, that comes later. I'm not opposed to porn, but porn can also totally distort the whole act, and it's not as healthy. It can be later, but it shouldn't be your first really visual of how you should act and how you should scream and how you should moan. But it's really paying attention to your body.
As the colder weather starts to set in, it is important to take care that our immune systems are in good shape for optimal brain and body health. Yet one area that is often overlooked when it comes to a healthy immune system is our gut. This is why I love Kettle Fire's incredible range of sustainably made, nutrient-rich bone broths, soups, and stocks, which are the perfect way to support your gut and immune system this fall. Their products are made using grass-fed and finished beef bones, pasture-raised chicken bones, and organic herbs and veggies, and contain no artificial anything. I personally love using their tom yum bone broth in warming Thai curries as weather gets colder outside, and their chicken and beef broths in my soups and stews. Sometimes I even just like warming up their broths on the stove, adding ginger and lemon, and drinking them straight from a mug. They are so delicious. These broths also support a healthy gut-brain connection, which is so necessary for our mental well-being, and they are perfect to have on hand in case you get sick. Simply heat and eat Kettle Fire's amazing broths and soup, or use in recipes for added nutrients. If you want to try Kettle Fire's delicious products, you can use the code DRLEAF for 25% off your order. Just visit kettleandfire.com/DRLEAF and use the code DRLEAF to get 25% off your order. The link and details will be in the show notes. Well, that's key there. So it's paying attention to your body and understanding the stages. And you talk about the increased blood flow, what's happened in your brain as well. So your mind is so you've got to, with your mind, you've got to get the mind right, to get the brain right, to get 100%. The body right. And it's that whole psychoneurobiological cycle comes in. So there's all the preparation and the build up. Those are very important, aren't they, in terms of preparing for the sexual act? It's not just, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, that terrible saying.
Exactly.
It's really a whole build up, maybe of days, of during the day, of a few days, of building up the anticipation, because that all creates all that, the response inside the brain, preparing the body. That is very important, isn't it? The whole preparation phase.
And it's such a good point because, mental imagery, I think that's really sexy anyway. And it's, it's fun and it's relaxing. And, it's like mindfulness is part of getting into the mood, like paying attention to your breathing, right? Isn't that sort of part of that process? So the mind-body clitoral connection, it is the best trifecta out there. And I think it's important to know one other interesting statistic. If women take 13 to 20 minutes to have an orgasm, well, guess what, men? It's 3 to 5 minutes. So we're really not in sync. We're not well in sync if you plan on, coming together, which is so great, but it's not as realistic. I think first and foremost is your most important partner.
That's really important. That's so good. What about also the impact of mental health and sex after the actual sexual act? There's always so much intimacy and such a special feeling. And, I always think about my husband. I've been married for 34 years. We've been together for 35 and a half years. But it just gets better all the time.
And that's so nice.
It's amazing. But the bond that it builds and that mental health, that pulling, that connection, and I know there's all the neurology, because the neuroscience side, that you literally build the partner inside you. Literally in your brain, you are building that. And so there's that calling, that you create this calling kind of setup with the partner, and you literally each other inside each other's brains and minds, and you're calling to each other. But there's always such a beautiful thing afterwards. Can you talk a little bit about that in terms of the...
Yeah, well, it's such a good point, because the fourth and final stage of sort of the sexual response is what they call resolution. And so orgasm is not even the end. That's sort of the third stage. But
third stage. So what are the first three? Sorry, Sherry, just say what the first three are again.
So
desire?
It's desire, and then arousal, and then orgasm, and then resolution. So what's really cool about resolution, to your point, is that you have this overwhelming sense of well-being. You feel, at peace. You feel calm. You feel relaxed. Your everything kind of relaxes, and it's kind of a joyful moment. And this is where you want to really have that extra bond. It's not the time to get up and go to the bathroom. That will happen later, but it is that, 15, 20 minutes of just holding each other, kissing and stroking each other. And it's really beautiful. It's really, really beautiful. I'm glad you brought that up.
And it carries over into, I've seen quite a few studies where, and I've experienced it myself, it carries over. It's not just like in that hour, it's the next day. There's an impact, and you can kind of grab that and grow that. And that's something that I wanted to ask you about. But from a neuroscience perspective, from a mind, brain, body, I have seen that if I am quite deliberate about the next day, and then you can actually stretch that impact over a few days, and it's positive. There's just this amazing bond. Does that make sense? And
Yeah.
that's so good for mental health. I mean, that is just such good mental health stuff.
It is really good. One of my patients used to tell me, she said, my foreplay on Sunday night is when my husband automatically does the dishes, and then he empties the trash, and then he comes up to the bedroom, and, it's that, Sunday night sex. But to your point, it's like, there's many things we do outside the bedroom that set the stage for really beautiful intimacy with you and your partner.
That's so critical. I don't think that's always, thought about enough. I think people know this, but are you actually planning that into your life? Is that something you would recommend, that you actually plan this in your life, that you talk about this and you kind of, it doesn't always work out, but if you're just going to go through the day and rush through the day and, let's have sex, it doesn't quite work the same as if you bring some more sort of planning to the and fun and anticipation. That's the word I was looking for. Anticipation to the whole situation.
Yeah, I think it's true. I mean, I think, it's all part of empowering yourself and controlling a positive relationship. And look at you. I mean, you've been married so many years and you're so happy. You seem like you really like each other. But, if your partner does something you really like and it's has nothing to do with inside the bedroom. I mean, I think it's important to say, I really like it when you take the clothes downstairs to put in the washing machine, or you do the dishes for me. It really turns me on. I think there's a lot of things around that. And I think it's good for your relationship. It's good for communication, because that, of course, is at the root of everything. It's good for activities under the sheets.
Absolutely. It's to have that appreciation of each other, but resolving issues too. If you leave unresolved issues, that's certainly going to impact one's whole desire. That whole cycle will be impacted. So that's really, that's a huge part of what I do, is like get those issues sorted out, because detox your brain, detox, if there's something going on, trying to get it to a point of resolution, because that will have an impact. What about the actual physical and mental effects of the 4 stages of sex to the resolution stage? Neurochemically, there's a change, and physiologically, can you talk about that and just what that does for the body and the brain, and then also obviously the mind?
And I think the mind, and we talk about running a marathon for the dopamine and what's happening in our brain, the feel-good hormones, Pitocin, and things that are going on when you are certainly in a physical state. We know that all these feel-good hormones are happening, again, above the shoulders. This is really our biggest erogenous zone in my mind. But it's really important. We don't talk about it enough, but I think it's so important, where it's the desire where it starts. And hopefully you don't have negative energy or, anxiety or depression that's really blocking. Those are the bad hormones that are sort of blocking the feel-good, epinephrine, and some of the good hormones that are really guiding us. And that, of course, increases our heart rate and our breathing, and you're just going with it. So through those stages of desire and arousal, it's all sort of climaxing, at that point, to allow you to climax. So it's all really happening, this whole mind-body connection. I mean, we just don't talk about it enough. And I wish we did, because desire to me is all mental wellness. And you're an active participant. We're empowering you. There's no shame. You're owning it. You're enjoying it. It's your me time. So this is the connection that I think is so powerful.
Do you think, Sherry, that a lot of the problems, I think you've already answered this, but do you think a large part of the problem that because women seem to battle more with orgasms and climaxing and enjoying sex than what men do? I don't know, I could be wrong. Can you correct me there? But but women don't talk about it enough, as we've already said. But do you think that the way we've been brought up, the conditioning, and you have mentioned this here, but how is it getting better? Are people getting through this problem? Is it becoming more open? Are women starting to say, hey, this is, sex is for women too? Because it used to be huge. Like I think I'm older than you. I'm not sure what our age difference is, but it just was never spoken about when I grew up.
Yeah.
It was just but I'm so much more open with my own kids. So it's a whole generation later. But it's totally open, and there's nothing, everything's on the table. We talk about everything that they want to know, and they ask us questions. And I'm trying to create a healthy environment for them to actually enjoy sex and to realize it's such an important part of who you are as a person.
Yeah.
Is this shifting? Is it changing?
It's definitely changing. I mean, the whole narrative on women's health, the vagina, sex, hormones, menopause, perimenopause. Women, I think, Me Too movement, Time's Up, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. There's been a lot of momentum where women now are just kind of like tired of it, and the vagina has come out of the closet. And with the vagina, the vulva, thank God, nothing, we're separating those two names. Now we know the vulva. Well, what makes up the vulva? The clitoris is there. So I think there is this shift where the conversation is happening. Women are feeling more empowered. We're feeling shameless to talk about taboo subjects. I think social media has been really helpful, that people can listen to you and I talking now instead of just blindly looking at, sites that maybe not be as helpful. So I think it's
or make
it's
them feel worse about themselves. Sorry, yeah. So make them, like, you look at the wrong site, you can think, well, I don't do that. I can't do that. I can't achieve that. What's wrong with me? We've got to always get away from that. As soon as you don't feel valued, that's going to affect your sex life. So from what I'm understanding, identity is massive in being able to have a healthy sex life, that you get that full mental and physical benefit from it. Because if you're feeling like you're not valued, it's, it'll be all the wrong reasons and you won't get quite the same level of benefit. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, it's so true, because and I think women, we almost have to pull ourselves up sometime by the bootstraps. And I think it's the part of the women's movement that's happening right now, and it's happening on all levels. So it's exciting to see that not necessarily our generation, but the generations that are coming behind us, they're changing this whole conversation. They're owning it. They're empowering themselves. And I think, to your point, mentally, you have to believe in yourself to lead the way. It's up to you always. It's always up to you, nobody else.
You said something very relevant earlier on. It's not up to your partner to get you to orgasm or for you to enjoy sex, to make you enjoy sex. Not up to, which is kind of been an old sort of teaching. It is something beautiful for you as a woman. So learn as much as you can, because you're entitled to enjoy it as much as you actually want to, and you can keep on enjoying it. And that's a new kind of thinking, isn't it? That's
exactly.
Sort of, you're entitled to enjoy it just as much as what a male. I mean, it's terrible that it's been like this for all these years, and thank goodness the new generations are changing it. And that, as you say, we're having these conversations.
Yeah, listen, the more people like you and I are talking about it, we're normalizing it. We're giving women approval, sort of permission to enjoy their body and not feel shameful. I mean, that's what it's about, ladies.
Shame is an absolute killer, isn't it? That
worst.
Shame is just. Do you find that's a big problem with people that you see, that shame's a big issue?
All the time. And it's, it's just reinforcing it. And that goes back to our, who we spend our time with, and our mothers, our grandparents, our, religion,
cultural, religious. Yeah.
And
that's really done a lot of.
Still there. It still exists.
It's still there. It still exists, but it is changing, which is a wonderful thing. Do you think the statistics will start changing? If only, like you said, 25% of women, what's the 25% of women?
There are only 25% can have an orgasm with vaginal penetration with the penis, where the clitoris is not being touched. If the penis is inside and you get stimulated by your partner's hand or your hand, that's the best way to do it. But just by itself, only 25% of women, because women feel like they're failing if they don't have an orgasm with vaginal penetration.
Wow, that is such a good point that you've just made. That's amazing. So 25% will not have an orgasm with vaginal penetration, and women. But that's what sex has been made out to be. It's penetration that leads to orgasm. So if you're not having it, there's something wrong with you.
Right.
And I've had people say that to me. I've had people actually ask me, but what's wrong with me? And they having pleasure, the man or the partner, but I'm not having pleasure. It's very often, most of the time it's been male-female relationships where the female's not enjoying it, the man is. And there's something, they feel like there's something wrong with them. So that's a very interesting point that people need to remember, that so you need to have the extra clitoral stimulation.
Exactly. And that's fine. I mean, reach in front, find your clitoris, and often they're excited when you join. Again, that too is like, oh God, they're going to know that I touch myself, or I know where the clitoris is. But yeah, you do, and you should, and there's nothing wrong with it. And often your partner will be very excited, for a little help.
I think that's amazing. That's just such a different and more open way of I think if you have a partner, I've been very lucky because my husband's just been from the beginning, has been so open and helpful and teaching me things, and has always been about, but not everyone has that. Not everyone has this ideal partner. And so that's where you have to take things into your own hands and maybe teach your partner. And there's nothing wrong with that. That has to be a big part of it. You started saying earlier on in terms of helping someone who's not having an orgasm. So you started talking about masturbation as a big part of that, being able to help someone to have an orgasm, because that is a very satisfying part of sex. You want to have the orgasm, does make you feel more fulfilled, like it's completed. And if so few people aren't, and hopefully it will change in the future, it seems like the lack of orgasm. So two parts of the question. It seems like the poor percentage of women orgasming is related to the ingrained cultural toxic mindsets from culture, religion, upbringing, etc., and also through a lack of education. So if we address those two factors, educating a woman and also helping them to overcome those toxic mindsets, do you think it's going to change the percentage-wise?
I do think so. I mean, like I said, I think that the education piece, and you may not get it from your gynecologist, or you could get it from a conversation like we're having, but, I think there are a lot of places to go early on. Like, don't wait to think about this as being important, just like eating and drinking. You having an orgasm is up there. It's an important part of our core. So you have to give it some, research and learn about the why, and not be ashamed, and understand the importance of it. I mean, there's a lot of benefits of an orgasm, right? It's good for our mental health, right? It's good for our physical health, good for our heart. It's good, it's good for our blood pressures. It's good for stress. There's a lot of benefits. It's like a sleeping pill for many of us too. So there's a lot of right? So not only the physical, but there's mental benefits. So first is educate yourself, learn about it, why it's important. And then you need to do the homework. And the homework may take some time. It may take time. It may take different strategies. Read about it. Learn from experts in the field. You can Google now. You can look at TED Talks. There's some experts out there that are amazing, and you cannot rush it. You cannot rush it. And you shouldn't. So invest in yourself, invest in your body, invest in your sexual health.
I love that. Okay, let's quickly talk about the stages. So we know that there's, the premenopausal, then menopausal, postmenopausal, but then there's also the young, the adolescent. And so could you talk just a little bit about the different stages of desire and sexual frequency? I know it's different for each person, obviously every couple, but is there sort of some general guidelines that may help people understand this? And also the impact of medications. I know you and I both know, like antidepressants, which
Oh yeah.
One of their major things is a lack of libido, and
it's terrible. I mean, and there's some known culprits, but I think hormonally, it's important to realize that there are hormonal cycles that we go through. Puberty. It's kind of young to really know how it's going to affect you, although you are becoming a lady and things are changing. But really, it's late teens, early 20s, puberty, where you're really going to feel more comfortable. But you should nonetheless learn about it. PMS can affect your libido for sure. 2 weeks before your period, like, you may not have an interest. Your desire, right? Stage 1, you may not have it. And that's okay. You have to want it, and you may not. Hormonally, it's sort of working against you. Just know that it's normal. Your 40s, when you're in perimenopause, that's the worst time, because your body, hot flashes, night sweats, anxiety, depression, heart palpitations, fatigue, you're not feeling it. You don't always know why. But hormonally, your estrogen up and down, your androgens, testosterone, they're all over the place. So low libido is common. Know that. Pregnancy, low libido for many. I mean, hats off to you. You didn't have that issue, but a lot of women are too afraid. Men are afraid. It's not necessarily high sex time, but sometimes it can be. Postpartum, again, estrogen drops as you're nursing. The vagina gets dry. You're not into it. So these are normal hormonal cycles that are really common. Menopause, again, that's a whole nother topic, because no estrogen, vaginal dryness, you got to pay attention. But talk to your doctor about what's happening. This, again, brings your legs up in stirrups. Your doctor's not asking you. You should bring it up.
Ask your doctor. Mm-hmm. That's really good. Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Well, just lastly on medications, I mean, if up to 25%, 30% of women suffering from depression, anxiety, and they're, it's a disease, right? As you know, and they need a medication. They're on Zoloft or Prozac. Those are known medications, Paxil, to decrease your libido. They do, and they decrease your ability to have an orgasm. Well, Wellbutrin may not. Wellbutrin may not affect your libido. So talk to your doctor about medical conditions and medications you're on.
When you do what you love, like running, like racing, like enjoying the great outdoors, you want to do it for life. Inside Tracker can help. Inside Tracker was founded in 2009 by leading scientists in aging, genetics, and biometrics. Using their patented algorithm, Inside Tracker analyzes your body's data to provide you with a clear picture of what's going on inside of you and to offer you science-backed recommendations for positive diet and lifestyle changes. Then Inside Tracker tracks your progress every day, every step of the way towards reaching your performance goals and living a longer, healthier life. For a limited time, you can get 25% off the entire Inside Tracker store. Just go to insidetracker.com, Dr. Leaf. The link and details will be in the show notes. You mentioned there, like, I can shift the narrative slightly, that instead of seeing anxiety and depression as its and as mental diseases, they're not actually brain diseases. They actually are signals that something's going on. So from my experience working with patients, and I'm obviously not an OB-GYN, but working with people, very often the side effect has been sexual issues in the marriage, and that's affected. If it's a problem, it's 95% of the problem. If it's it's in terms of relationship, if it's going okay, it's only 5% of the sort of, because it's just happening, it's working. But it's anxiety and depression, when a person sees it, that's from my experience, sees it as a illness, they feel hopeless. But I'd like to throw into the pot in terms of sexual desire, if you're feeling depression, there's a reason why, as opposed to being an illness and there's something wrong with you. You aren't depression, you can't be depression, you can't have depression, you're experiencing it as a messenger. And if you can see it as a messenger and find out why, you can then detox that, and then that can in itself can help to improve the depression. So there's a lot of mental work there, because those drugs, if you've got a trauma and you're not dealing with it, or there's something in the relationship or work or whatever, or normally a combination of situations, and you're on the antidepressant, that is a real, combination for affecting people's desire and all the stages of sex. I don't know. That's how I see it from my work as in psychoneurobiology. That's a huge part.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I mean, I think there's a lot you can do that if you have a low desire and you're premenopausal, I mean, there are some other things besides mindfulness and, talk therapy. Addie is one of the FDA approved medications for women. ADDY, Addie. It's one of the, I think, 2 now FDA approved drugs for low sex drive in premenopausal women. And it actually has been found to increase the number of what they call satisfying sexual events. And it reduces sexual stress. You take it at night, and it's been found to be really helpful as another alternative in treatment.
Oh, wow. So there are different treatments to help people, which is amazing, because it's so important to understand that. So if someone who's in their early 20s or 30s or something like that, and they're battling with sexual desire, or they can't have an orgasm, or it's painful, let's talk about that, like painful sex or something like that. What can one do about that? And let's kind of maybe wrap with this question, but painful sex, and that's very often in an early marriage, it can be the case.
Yes.
But I think it can happen at any stage. So 100%. Let's talk about pain.
Well, painful sex is, the list is long as why, but vaginal dryness is probably at the top. And it's, you know what? If you're not having adequate foreplay, you're not wet enough. It's going to be dry, and it's not going to be fun. It's going to be painful. So getting a good lube, extra virgin coconut oil. I have one from Urgia Intimates that's an intense lubricating that also has CBD in it, because CBD is so great for anti-inflammatory. It's analgesic, so it has a soothing effect. But lube is so easy. 80% of women say they enjoy sexual intercourse with a lube. Don't feel shame. Don't ever feel shame to bring in a lube, because it's really helpful for women.
Oh, that's incredible. That's incredible advice. Well, there's so many questions so many directions we can go in. What do you think we haven't touched on for today's first discussion?
I think to give a shout out to menopausal women, because vaginal dryness is game changer. It just ruins the intimacy because the vagina is so dry. There are so many things you can do, from hyaluronic acid inside the vagina. Again, ladies, treat your vulva and vagina like your face. You have to hydrate, moisturize, and cleanse. And if you think that way, early on as a young lady, you won't have as many problems with dryness, which leads to itching and irritation and pain. So hyaluronic acid, a good lubricant, very important to do. You have to treat every day, pay attention to the vulva and vagina.
I love that. I love that you said treat, and this is what you said before, and I'm so glad that you brought that up. Treat your vagina like you treat your face. I mean, look at all the creams and the cleansing and and everything we put on our face. We should be doing the same thing with our vagina.
100%.
And you mentioned the Urge products. They are amazing. I mean, they're wonderful. I love them. So that there are, and there are products out there. And you said virgin coconut oil is a great lube as well.
So good.
And that's super healthy. And you can just go get that at your local supermarket if you're too shy to go and ask for lube at a pharmacy.
Exactly. You can. I mean, don't get the kind that smells like Maui, because that probably has ingredients that you shouldn't be putting in the vagina, but it's a great lube. Or you can get our Intense Urge lubricant with CBD and extra virgin coconut. There's a lot of things. I mean, the bottom line is that women have to empower themselves through and through, take control of your intimate health, your mental health, and your sexual well-being, and learn your body, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. You deserve it.
And let that shame and guilt go away. Don't let the shame and guilt. You're beautiful. You have a sexual desire. You have a sexual body. You have a sexual response. Own it. And enjoy it. Don't try and suppress it with everyone's rules. And if those rules are impacting you, it's not good for you.
Exactly.
That's kind of like, if it's hurting you and it's hurting your beautiful thing that we have, which is sex between us, between two people that love each other, why not do everything you can to make it the most ultimate experience? And you are an expert in helping people get to that point. So thank you so much, Dr. Sherry. It's been so great talking to you. And I look forward to doing another interview where we can dive into more topics.
I can't wait. You're doing great work. Thank you for what you do. And let's keep the conversation going, ladies.
Absolutely. Let's keep it going. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I hope you found today's podcast interesting and helpful. If you want more tips and help with managing anxiety, depression, and mental health, be sure to visit my website at drleaf.com. and to sign up for my weekly newsletter, where I also include a schedule of my speaking events and so much more. And follow me on social media. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Just look for Dr. Caroline Leaf. Also, I love seeing all your posts on social media about this podcast. I love seeing what resonates with you and what you've learned. So be sure to continue posting and tagging me and letting me know what you think and how these tips worked out for you. And don't forget, leave a review and keep spreading the word about this podcast. Thank you for joining me today. I really hope you learned something new and helpful. Till then, I'm Dr. Caroline Leaf. This podcast represents the opinions of myself and my guests. The content here should not be taken as medical advice. The content here is for educational and informational purposes only. Please consult your healthcare professional for any individual medical questions you may have. While we make every effort to ensure that the information we are sharing is accurate, we welcome any comments, suggestions, or corrections of errors.